Hi there, and welcome back to the Solera Elevate Blueprint podcast. Today, we are joined by Chris, and he is one of the leaders in the recruiting, HR, talent acquisition world that we talk about all the time here. He is a founder and leader of 3 companies that are all Chicago-based. He's known for building a super high-performance culture with exceptional retention, and his companies have earned industry and workplace recognition for growth, employee experience, and he has a really sharp lens for AI, which is one of the things that we also talk about here. So testing tools consistently to make sure he frees his team from like the low value tasks that nobody wants to do and really protect their time for what matters most. So we're really happy to have Chris. I'm so glad to have you here, Chris. And let's just start with what you've learned about building a culture so that people actually want to stay within your companies.
Yeah, cool. So good question. I mean, firstly, thanks for having me on the podcast. We really love what you guys are doing. Absolute pleasure to be here. In terms of what I've learned, I mean, there's a lot, I could honestly, sort of write a book about this. But when I think about retention, firstly, I think it's making sure that you have complete clarity, as a company of what you are and what you're not, being aware of kind of, what your strengths are and making sure that you attract people that are going to thrive in that type of environment. You can't be all things to all people. And when I look at our environment, I think we have a very, very strong culture. We're quite demanding of our people. We expect people, to work hard. We expect them, there are going to be times where, they might need to work out of hours or work weekends or whatever. But the crucial thing is being transparent from the get-go about, kind of what we expect and what we can offer, in return. I've always believed, as a CEO that, if you do nothing else but attract and retain the best talent, you will do very well in as a business. And when I getting back to your original question, what's the main thing that you've learned? It probably is that, right? Getting the right people on the bus and making sure they want to stay. They are well paid. They feel that they're being developed. They feel that they belong. They feel that they have friends and support at work. They feel that the company has a bright future. No one complains about their seat when they're on a rocket ship kind of concept. And, I think, if you can do that, if you can attract excellent people and retain them, again, you can make a lot of other mistakes as a business and still have a very good business, in my opinion.
And what I hear you saying also, is it's about making sure that you get the right people in the first place, but it's also about the culture that you build within the company. And that culture is going to really not only continue to keep people there, but also continue to attract new people because you're going to have more of a referral base and things like that because culture matters.
I mean, it is to your point, it is very much a snowball effect. And it does, you get good referrals, you get good brand, like a good Glassdoor, you get, a good brand. Even when people come to interview, they can feel the passion in the room. They meet with people that really, really want to be here. When I came back after Christmas, we closed the company on the 2nd. So we were gone for about 10 days. And I don't know whether people were just giving me lip service because I'm the CEO, but the amount of people that said, man, I really miss being at work over the Christmas break. I'm really happy to be back. I miss the people, I miss the buzz of the office. Again, might have been, giving me a little bit of lip service, but that makes me proud. And whereas I think a lot of other companies, maybe people are going back first day after break being like, man, I really wish I was still on my holidays. So, but yes, to your point, I do think it is a bit of a snowball effect. Like it's hard to get it initially, but once you get that culture, it's quite self-policing. People are very proud of our culture. If they find that maybe someone says something that's a bit counterculture, they'll call it out. And because of that, you attract the right people and then it starts to really come snowball.
Well, and clearly you've made your employees feel safe so that they actually can call things out and all of that, which is honestly, obviously a part of that culture too. So in your businesses, clearly you've got a people first philosophy, like we just kind of discussed. So if people know that, I'm sure you've got people banging down your doors to work for you. Because you've been given so many accolades, so many awards, people really want to work for your companies. So what would you say your maybe not so secret sauce is, but what's the sauce that like helps you wade through and say, you know what, I've got like 5 awesome candidates here because maybe they were all referrals, but how do you feel like you go about picking out the best of the best? Because you're not going to have the low retention that you have unless you have the best of the best.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very, very true. I think last year, we interviewed 400 grads and we hired 10. So, we do have, kind of a very, very high bar. I think, it's being crystal clear in terms of the competencies that you require. We hire more on competencies than we do based on experience. We kind of learned the hard way that, just because someone has very relevant experience doesn't mean they're going to be a good fit for our organization. So, I think that's the main thing. And then, we're just being really kind of like unyielding about those standards. For us, we look for people that are incredibly driven, and it's easy to say, we look at people that are driven, but we need to see real tangible evidence that you are a driven individual. That people will say, yeah, I'm really driven. I did kind of X, Y, and Z, but like, there's a girl, she's a fresh grad. I just interviewed her yesterday. We're making her an offer today, and she was like a figure skater for the US national team. When she was like 17, and like that is exceptional, right? She did that whilst in high school, whilst getting fantastic grades. She's just graduated from she's about to graduate from University of Michigan with a bachelor's in neuroscience. Like, she's clearly an incredibly intelligent, high-powered person. That has clear examples of being far more driven, than the average individual. So, when we have a pretty good lens on what we want. We want people that are driven. We want people that are coachable. We want people that are ambitious. And, we want people that we know are going to enjoy our culture. If you're someone that is, maybe you prefer a remote working environment, maybe you prefer, kind of being left on your own to do your own thing, that's fine. There's a lot of great people that are like that. I personally know many people that are incredibly successful in that environment, but that's just not really us. Like, we have a hybrid schedule, but we kind of prefer people that like being in the office. Like, we like people that feed off the energy, that are more people. And again, that's not to say there's anything wrong with people that aren't like that, but again, you can't be all things to all people, and I think you need to have kind of clarity on that. But answer to your question, yeah, I think it's having complete clarity in terms of the competencies that you need, and they just maintain that very high bar. Like, if we don't find people that are at that bar, we won't hire anyone. We would rather run slightly more lean than hire people for the sake of hiring people. Obviously we're not owned by PE. We don't have aggressive headcount goals that we're like, right, we have to be at 200 people in the next 2 years. We could kind of grow, at our own pace, and we want to grow ambitiously, but we also want to maintain, kind of the high standards.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think there's probably a lot of people looking and would be very, very honored to be a part of your company, because I feel like we're coming out of this place where, after COVID, everybody wanted to work from home. People got really used to working from home. A lot of people lost a lot of their drive because the coffee cooler talk, the water cooler talk, that revs people up, that gives people energy. And there's a competitive factor when you're next to someone and you're in the office and you get together after work, maybe for a drink or to play ping pong or, whatever it is. Like, that camaraderie can't be done. Even though people try, that can't be done on Zoom. I think that's probably another reason why your companies are, like you said, that rocket ship, because you have the ability to allow people to, a hybrid schedule, but really bring people together. And that's
exactly. And like, again, you've got to be aware again of who you are and who you're not. Like I said before, my wife's a partner at a law firm. She's incredibly successful, and she much prefers working from home. She's a lot more effective working from home, and it's perfect for her, right? She is 37 years old. She's, kind of she's been doing her job for 10, 12 years. She's very effective. And this isn't to say that, people can't be very, very effective, kind of working remotely. I think that's great for some people. But when you look at our demographic, we are predominantly a sales organization. Most of the people that we hire are grads. The average, person within our sales team is probably 24, 25 years old, still learning, still developing. I know how much I learned, from osmosis, when I first started in my career. If we had an organization that were, again, maybe more experienced in a different industry, it might be kind of like, a different, kind of feel.
Sure.
For us, when we have such a high grad concentration, when we have people that are so early in their career, I almost feel that, you're kind of doing people a disservice. If you don't give them that environment, if you don't allow them to sit next to someone who is exceptionally good at this job and hear how they do this job, if you don't allow them to walk down the sales floor, knock on my office, say, hey, I've got a problem, can you help me with this? So again, I think that, it's about regardless of what your business model is, just about having clarity of, kind of what, again, what really works in your environment. For us, it's an in-office, kind of high energy culture. For somebody else, it might be a fully remote culture, where people are very, very well supported and have a good mission, but you can, attract people all over the country because, kind of you'll be fully remote. There really is no right or wrong answer. I think the crucial thing is that you know who you are and what model really works for you and your business.
I think that's a very fair point, because there's success to be found wherever, as long as people want to find success. But I know in my tenure in life, I have been very heavily involved in sales. And what I have found with sales is that people that are typically in sales are people. So if you have a bunch of people that don't get to be interactive with people, that doesn't necessarily make for the best organization. So that's brilliant to know exactly what it is you're doing. So to that point of like knowing what exactly you do, that one of the things that we talk about here is at Solera Elevate is keeping the human in human resources, talent acquisition, et cetera, but doing it while we are growing and utilizing AI in order to get rid of the mundane tasks and, kind of utilize people to the best of their ability and let technology do what it can do that we don't want to do. So how have you found in the past couple of years as it's kind of come about? What have you found in your company? What are you using it for? Where do you feel it's been effective? Where do you feel that maybe it should never go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, it's about AI allows you to, it will do a lot of those mundane tasks for you, so you can spend more time doing what AI can't do, which is relationship building, spending time with your customers, spending time with your both candidates and clients, if you're in our world, so that's where we've had, kind of tremendous success with it, to be honest. Like, I think that, in our industry, there are parts of our industry that will be taken over by AI. We are in the staffing industry, and the end of the industry that is a bit more kind of job driven, where there's a lot of applicants, like kind of grad level hiring, where there's, it's quite easy for AI to go in and find a bunch of candidates, sift through a bunch of resumes and say, okay, these candidates are, going to be the ones that you want to hire. That part of the industry, I believe, over the next, 5 years, whatever, will be kind of taken over by AI. We work in very high level kind of senior industries where relationships are critical. We work within the high frequency trading industry. We work within the renewables, engineering, like senior tech industries. So we work in the kind of industries where that relationship with the candidate, is absolutely critical. Like, they can work with any agency, but they choose to work with you because you have met them multiple times, because you have, gone for lunch with them, about the kids, about, what they do. And that's the kind of thing that AI can't take over. So, where we've seen, kind of a big bonus from AI is historically people can only spend, I don't know, 20-30% of their time doing that, meeting with customers, meeting with candidates, and actually relationship building, because they spend a lot of their time on some of the administrative tasks. Well, we've implemented AI is trying to eliminate, kind of as much of that kind of grunt work and that administrative work that we can. So it allows our people to do more of the heavy hitting things, right? More of the relationship building. And it's interesting because, as the market evolves, some of the skill sets that we look for have changed. Like, we previously being incredibly well organized and being, kind of super structured, I think is still important, but, you can set AI up to do those kind of things. Yeah. Whereas being a relationship builder, that's not something really that, you can utilize AI for. So, as this kind of evolves, I also think that, kind of the skill sets that become more valuable are a bit different, kind of those people that are very, very strong in relationship building. That's something that AI is certainly not in the short term, going to be able to, to accomplish. So, and that's how we use it. I think that, a few other, kind of things that I would mention. I think adoption and training, is more essential than the tools themselves. I think you've got to look at AI as a mindset. Same with all technology, right? I think, throughout, kind of my career, I think AI is probably evolving technology faster than I've seen it, kind of in my 15-year or so career. However, there's always been tools that have come up and kind of staying, kind of ahead of the game is important. But I think having it as a mindset with your company, how can I become more efficient? How can I stay in contact? What are my competitors doing? Trying to get people come to you, be like, hey, I just saw this cool tool that one of my buddies is using at his firm. We should try that. Like that, kind of mentality. And then making sure that everyone is an 8 out of 10 or more across the whole company in your tech stack. I think a lot of people get fascinated with one individual tool and say, well, that's really cool. And maybe it is cool, but does it actually fit into what you're doing as a whole business? And I often think, when I think back to the last organization that I worked at before I launched Entel, we used a ton of tools, but I would guess that the average user was a max of 5 out of 10, on these tools. Whereas if you can get the whole company, kind of getting to an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or better, I think that is a far more effective and also probably cheaper because, you're maximizing what you have rather than investing in a bunch of other things.
Sure. And with AI, as you know and I know, the tool's only as good as what it's taught. So if you've got a majority of your team at an 8, then that tool is really, really learning a lot more and only going to be more efficient for you. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Now, Chris, I know you're a busy guy, so we're not taking up too much of your time here today, but I have one more question for you. And I like to ask this at the end of all my podcasts. And basically, it's if you could go back. Now, you said you had a 15-year career. I always use the word 10, so you can choose, which way you go. But if you would go back to that where you were 10, 15 years ago, and you could change something, you could teach yourself something with what you know today, what do you think that you would give yourself 10, 15 years ago? What do you think the advice you would give yourself, not only for yourself, but maybe someone that might listen to this that says, you know what, I want to do what Chris is doing. I want to be successful like him. What's your advice to somebody in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. This might be a very, very cheesy answer, but I absolutely love what I do, and I'm incredibly blessed and fortunate to be in this role. Like, I think if I had a choice between being the quarterback for the Chicago Bears and kind of doing what I do, I'd probably still choose doing what I do. Like, I love being on.
Whoa.
I love the people that kind of I work with, and I really feel that I am where I'm meant to be. So the kind of the cheesy answer is, I kind of wouldn't change a whole lot, to be honest. Like, I think that, there have been the advice that I would give myself is, the challenging times, are formative. When I look back over my career, the tougher times were the times where I learned the most. And where I'm at today is so much a byproduct of those times. And I think that, for anyone's career, like, if someone is listening to this, just be very mindful of that. There might be times where you are really struggling, whether it's, kind of at work, whether it's mental health, physical health, kind of whatever. Typically, those are the times that are going to be the most formative and they're going to make you into, the person that you will one day become. And I think, kind of if you understand that, you learn that life is either achievements or it's lessons. And, I think that I perhaps in my early career didn't understand that. And I maybe put either a bit more pressure on myself or thought things were worse than they actually are. Now with the benefit of hindsight, I realize that a lot of the things that I do now, I learned to do, kind of when going through, all of those tough times. So, that's probably what I would say. Yeah, to myself, again, I feel like I am where I'm meant to be. So, there's nothing drastic I would change, but I think an appreciation for, the lessons that, I learned during those tough times. Anyone that is listening, that they are inevitable to success. And, if you make sure that you push through those tough times and you learn the lessons, then you will get through. And I'm sure you'll be very successful.
Oh, first of all, I don't think that was a cheesy answer at all. I think that was an incredible answer. And I also think that your quote, it's either a lesson or an achievement. I've never heard it put so simply. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can take with them. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you being here. And I know you're so busy. So taking out the time for us today, our little podcast really means a lot. And I know we'll stay in touch and, who knows why we were brought together, but we're so excited to have had you here on our podcast. We really want people to understand about how to utilize AI to their benefit while they're utilizing the human to the best of their ability. And there's a lot that can be learned from that. So you really taught us some things today, Chris.
Nice, that's amazing. And yeah, obviously, we're really happy with what you're doing. I'm a bit of a business nerd, I love helping, kind of businesses and if current entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs. And if there's anyone listening that wants to reach out to me, I'm sure you'll either be able to share my contact information or LinkedIn or anything like that. Or and yeah, and I appreciate, your time as well and everything that you guys
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I hope you have a wonderful day today. Enjoy it. I hope you stay warm. I'm in Pittsburgh. I know Chicago's cold too, so stay warm, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very
Great.
much.
Thanks, Chris. Bye bye.